What is happening with the market? I know everybody is asking that same question, especially because you probably just had Thanksgiving dinner and people were talking about it. If you have anybody who's bought a home, sold a home, or is in real estate at your table. So I'm going to break it all down. You probably also heard a couple of things being floated around 50-year mortgages. What's going on with those? And portable mortgages. And I'm sure those sound kind of interesting. So I'm going to break that down too. Another thing that you might have heard a lot about too is this impending foreclosure crisis. So let's talk about that as well. So let me just share my screen and I'm going to go over all of that fun stuff with you. So here we go. So what is happening right now? So what I want to do first, because of course my name is Lisa Angel. I'm with LPT Realty, and I am a 27-year veteran in the real estate market who has worked in many different markets and seen a lot of things. Haven't seen it all because I learn something new every day, but I'm here to help you with homes in the Coachella Valley and the desert cities. Palm Springs, Desert Hot Springs, Rancho Mirage, Cathedral City, Palm Desert, Quinta, Indio, Coachella, and Indian Wells, Bermuda Dunes, and Thousand Palms. So I think I might have forgotten one, but basically we're going to really close in on everything in the Coachella Valley first, and then we're going to talk about national stuff as well. So bear with me. It is morning. It is November 30th of 2025. It's just for reference because of course this is not going to be an evergreen video, but it will be interesting for anybody who's thinking about buying or selling at the last month of the year here in December of 2025 or really into 2026. We've got a lot of good information for you on that as well. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, it's morning, so I have to drink my tea. So bear with me. It is just part of what keeps me going. And in the morning, a little oolong tea. So what's going on right now is let's talk about, again, desert cities only. And we're just talking here about November. So basically the last 30 days, October 30th through November 30th. So we have right now 3,260 active and coming homes, coming soon, homes on the market. The average list price right now actually kind of floored me. It's 1.1 million. I'd have to go back a ways and see, if we had an average that high anytime before, which I thought was curious. And I was looking at the numbers. In fact, I took out two homes that were on the market because they were even skewed even higher. And I was like, what is happening? There's one home for 85 million right now and one home for 65 million. And then the next home down is 27. Well, 27 happens here, but 65 and 85, that's an outlier. So I actually took those out because they were just skewing the numbers too wildly. And just making it just didn't work, right? It's not average anymore when you've got those two pulling it out. Still interesting though. I'm gonna look and see if they're doing a broker's opening, so I want to take a look at them. So anyway, homes are taking around 70 days on the market to sell. All right. Now, keep in mind when it says 70 days, a lot of times too, that can mean that it's really more like, maybe it was on the market for 3 months before that, and then they relisted, and then they got to a lower price. And then because of that price, they now have an offer, and then it took them 70 days to sell. To be perfectly honest, if I went through every single home, I guarantee you the days on market is longer than 70. The 70 number is from the time that the home got listed with probably a price that was more appropriate. They might have tried it at a different price and then they expired or canceled and then they listed a little bit lower and then they finally hit that price and they sold. So just FYI. That's 70 with a price that's appropriate, most likely, or close to appropriate, then appropriate. They might have still had to come down one time. Keeping in mind too that right now, it's not the market isn't going down. It's just that a lot of it is here and a lot of sellers want to be here and they're just not. And in order to sell, they're just going to have to come to where the market is. In the Great Recession, we were kind of chasing prices down. That's a different story. You're losing money as you're staying too high. Right now, you're just kind of wasting time, Also, wasting time can also kind of waste you money too, because days on market, if you're a buyer, you walk into a property and you say, hey, how many days has this home been on the market? And your agent says 90 days. It's going to feel differently if you like that home than if they said 1 day, right? So days on market is important and a number that I don't think enough sellers really take into account because they say, well, we can always come down. You're going to lose that best time of the market is that first week when you're like the cool kid in school that like finally like everybody wants you. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean. So everybody wants you right now because you're the new guy, but then pretty soon you're getting market worn, you're getting to be the old guy. But anyway, okay, so right now under contract or pending, we've got 736 homes in escrow. So the buyer is in the process of they've got a signed around contract and they're in the process of purchasing that home. Okay. They're closed is when it's done. Active is when nobody has a signed around contract. So it's in that middle point. So what does that mean for our market overall? So months of inventory is a great way to get a good feel for where your market is. It's a very simple math problem. It's the active properties divided by the ones that are under contract. Okay. So how many months would it take at the current number of properties under contract to clear out the actives? So right now that number is 4.5, 4.43, 4.5 months. So if you were to sell everything at the current rate, it would take that long to do so. Now, how do we use that number? 0 to 3 months is generally considered or is considered a seller's market. Okay. So even in like 2021, we were in weeks of inventory in some cases, days of inventory. Like we've got 10 days of inventory because everything's selling so fast. So we've got 2 homes on the market and there's 2 under contract, 0 months of inventory, right? But 4 to 6 months of inventory is back to just being a normal, quote unquote, normal neutral market, right? Neither party has the big advantage. There's one home that might be priced really well, that's really attractive, that's still getting multiple offers. Or there's a buyer who was able to get a deal. It's going to be home by home dependent. So when you're talking to your cousin or your uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner table or Christmas this coming month, they're like, oh no, you got to offer them all this less money and you got to do this. And it's going to be house by house. It's going to be dependent on the property and the area and all the things. Okay. So 6 months or more means it's a buyer's market. As an example, during the Great Recession, I saw inventory as high as 13 months, meaning it was going to take over a year at the current rate of sales to get this sold. All right, so something to keep in mind. So we've got 531 homes that closed this last month in the desert cities. It's bad. It's not awesome, but it's not bad. The average sales price was $928,000. Now, last year, for the exact same time, there was almost the exact same number of closings. I mean, I say it's not bad, but honestly, 2024, but I think we were selling a little bit more the last couple months of the year. But 2024 overall was the worst year for number of sales, not amounts, not value, but number of sales because the inventory is still low too. I mean, that's the other thing, right? We don't have tons and tons of active listings by comparison. So that was the lowest number since the 90s, about 30 years since it had been that lowest for the number of home sales, which 30 years is a long time and a lot more people in the world. So which means that it's out almost less, right? The average sales price last year was $866, but I've got an interesting stat to show you in the next area here. So now let's look at, so that was just this last month. I think it's interesting to kind of put things in a perspective. 1 month versus, and now we're going to look at a 3 month, which I think is a lot more accurate. So we're going to look at Q3, the third quarter of the year, which is July 1st through September 30th. I would imagine most of you know that, not everybody does. So this year versus last year. So we had 1,560 total closed sales in Q3 of 2025. 2024 was 1,589. It's actually a little bit higher. Considering last year was the worst year for number of sales, that doesn't bode too well for us. This will be an interesting new video I do in January as to how the whole year went, right? So we'll see how that goes. And again, keep in mind, this is the desert cities. This is not national. All right. This is our area in the Coachella Valley. So, excuse me, the average price this year was 836,172. So that's for that 3-month gap. Again, getting a little more accurate. Closing in on 1 million, that seemed a little high, but that's what happened last month. So 836 is the 3-month snapshot. And last year it was 779. So that sounds like, oh wow, prices have actually gone up quite a bit. But they really actually haven't. So if you hear that, you can say, oh, actually that's not true. Because this sold price per square foot actually went down $1, only $1. And I averaged it. These are never on the nose. Okay. So last year it was $367 a square foot. This year it's $366 a square foot. So why are the prices so much higher this year for an average than last year? Well, of course, you probably already figured out or read that it's because the average home size purchased went up. So more people bought a bigger home this year than last year. So this year they bought a 2,020 square foot home on average versus last year they bought a 1,965 square foot home on average. So that's why. So what does that mean? It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. That's crazy, right? I actually thought that was quite weird. So days on market is 61. So again, days on market for this Q3 was 73. So if you're feeling like homes are sitting a little bit longer, it's because they are. They're not losing value necessarily, but they are sitting a little bit longer. And that does give buyers a little bit, at least some breathing. There was a long time there where you could not get an FHA buyer. We could not get them anything a lot of times, but because they were 3.5% down and they were competing with cash buyers or conventional buyers with 20% or more down, which are much more likely to go through. FHA and VAs, people like, oh, why do people not want FHA and VA loans? Well, listen, it's not because we want to support our veterans. We want new homeowners in the market, all these things, which is, by the way, another reason that if you've seen the average age of a first-time home buyer has gone up, it's partly because a lot of the home buyers were kicked out of the market the last few years. So there's that. Anyway, so they haven't had a chance to build equity and do all these things, right? There was a couple of years they just couldn't get into anything, but the VA and FHA, the appraisers do come through and they will require certain repairs. So while of course, those are great loan programs and very, very welcome in the market, they also tend to be a little more complicated, especially for a seller that might have a few, things wrong with their house. So they tended to be a little bit less, and they're 0 down or less down. Anyway, it made it a little bit more difficult, but let's go back to the days on market. 61 this last quarter of 2024, and then 73 this last quarter of this year. Again, like I said, or maybe I didn't say it in this video, but I might have said it in another one, where you've got again days on market that were happening prior to the maybe it got canceled or expired and then they relisted. Yeah, I did say this video, sorry. So yeah, though the number's probably higher. I'm just going to say it for both times. It's probably higher. But overall, though, for the numbers for the closings that finally did happen, they definitely were higher this year versus last year. And that is an interesting trend, at least to take a look at. So, but the funny part is, if you thought the home prices, because you heard some news story or clickbait, they're falling off a cliff and all the foreclosures, that has not happened. And another thing, I also want to talk about foreclosures because we're going to actually talk about it a little bit here. But before I even get into that, I actually had some buyers that made an offer on a foreclosure, and it was we had multiple offers. And we were up against, and we were the top 3, and we went well over asking price. The sellers were in foreclosure, and they were still able to sell their home and make money because I think some people think of like, okay, the foreclosure, if somebody goes into foreclosure, there's a process and it takes months. Usually 7 months is the time that it takes for a foreclosure to happen. From the time you miss your first payment to the time the bank actually takes back the home. Okay. It's a lot of time in there to get it sold. And I hate to think of people who don't know that you still have the right to sell your home and you're probably going to make some money. So if you even make a couple $1,000s, it's still going to be better than if you actually let the house go to foreclosure and you don't get anything, right? So, I think the bank, I believe, and don't quote me on this, I believe the bank is still supposed to give you your equity if there is any, but they've tacked on fees, they've tacked on more fees because they actually took it all the way through foreclosure. The fees add up, and pretty soon that's eating into your equity. But if you have any struggles paying your mortgage, and I know people all over the country, so this doesn't have to be just in the desert cities, but really good agents who can help you get your home sold, make you some money. In some cases, you might have 100,000, 200,000 in equity. And you can just take that money and go put down all the money on rent for a year and just not have to worry about it anymore. So just something to keep in mind. You probably still have equity and you can probably still sell your home. And just because you got that first notice that your home's going in foreclosure does not mean that you're done. You can sell it, get out from under it, just FYI. Okay. I just hate to see people that don't have all the options in front of them. Okay, so let's pull back and let's look at a broader view. Excuse me. Zillow put out the stat that 53% of homes dipped in value and everyone panicked, right? Here's the real context. That was a measure from the peak of 2022. So the average decline is only about 9.7%. So that's average over the whole country. And different pockets are going to pull it down and different pockets are going to raise it up a little bit. But honestly, it's not that bad. 96% of homeowners still have equity, and that is where the foreclosure conversation comes in, because that's an awful lot of people who have plenty of equity in their home who can just sell it if you are having any job loss or any struggles. So, and then actually, sorry, I forgot to change this. Our sold price per square foot was flat. It was $1 less than it was last year. So ignore my little note here because that was wrong. So yeah, foreclosures, even then, they're not happening. They're below normal even for starting foreclosures. So, there's a slight increase nationally, but you've got plenty. There's safer loans. In fact, one of the reasons for foreclosures back in 2008 was because a lot of adjustable rate mortgages adjusted, and then all of a sudden the payment went so high that people couldn't afford their home anymore. And they got in with like an 80-20 loan, which means 100% financing. They didn't have any money down. And so then the price goes up and then they end up just selling it, right? Or losing it rather, losing it. But right now there's safer loans because of regulation that was put in 2010 called the Dodd-Frank Act. And although not a perfect scenario, it still was good for making sure that when people are getting loans nowadays, that they actually are a safe loan. They're not a predatory loan, although we see a few things going that direction again, unfortunately. But anyway, so yeah, there's not going to be some big foreclosure crisis. And the reason why is even if a lot of people can't make their payment, they can still sell their house. It's not going to go back to the bank. So why would they, they might bring it down a little bit just to get it sold and get their equity before the foreclosure happens, but, just kind of get out of it or whatever. But, homes going back to the bank, still very low, probably going to continue that way. The 50-year mortgage, oh, this has been fun to talk about. So the 50-year loan and the portable mortgage buzz. So great little TikTok topics, but right now, neither one is the case. There are ideas that have been floated. Right now, the 50-year mortgage is illegal because it's considered predatory because of the reason that it would cost so much more interest for the homeowner for paying off that 50-year mortgage, especially in comparison to the relatively small amount that it would save you. And then it would also take you much longer. The average person lives in their home for 7 to 10 years. And by the way, if you bought a home 2 years ago and you didn't make any money on it between now and then, that is normal. That is normal. Homes are meant to be owned and for 7 to 10 plus years or more. That's how you make the money on them, right? And you're locking in a fixed home rate of an amount of money you're paying for the roof over your head. That's nice. You're making money with each payment. That's bringing your equity so that you have more money that's just yours as far as the value of the home ratio is concerned. But it's going to take you longer to get there on a 50-year, because even a 30-year is going to take you longer than a 15-year, right? So the reason most people move in 7 to 10 years is because now they can afford to. They've paid off enough of their loan, their home has gone up in value, and now they might want to move up or move down, right? Or maybe stay the same and they're just going to move somewhere else. They just want something different. They want a pool, they want it, whatever. So, but 50 years, it's going to take you longer to get to that point where you actually have a decent amount of equity. So much more of that loan over the first several years is going to be interest. So we'll see. And it actually will literally take an act of Congress to make it legal. So there's that. Now, taking portable mortgage. Let's face it, the investors and the banks and Wall Street is going to have to get behind this in order for it to happen. I have a particularly low rate on my house, and I would love to take actually, I love my house. I don't really want to go anywhere, but if I did, I'd want to be able to take my rate with me because I have a low 2 rate. And my best thing I could do would be like a 5.99, which one of my buyers did get recently, by the way, just closed in October, 5.99, 5 handle, as we call it. That's kind of fun. I have great lenders. If you have any questions about loans, even just questions, they'd be more than happy to help you. Let me know. I can send them your way. No obligation, just people who will be very helpful for you. But yeah, so if it ever does happen, it's gonna, I don't see it happening right now. There's certain terms that have been set with all of these mortgages, but I don't see the banks going, oh, sure, we'll let the person who needs to move their 2.5% interest rate with them, and instead of the 6.2% interest rate we could have gotten otherwise. I don't really see that happening. It's a nice idea. We'll see. If it happens, like I said here, I'll be screaming it from the rooftops. Okay, so what to expect into 2026. So National Association of Realtors, which I know it's not a perfect organization, but they are really good data. They really are. They have a great economist, Lawrence Yun. I love listening to him when he's talking about different things when it comes to our housing market. But as far as data nerds like myself are concerned, NAR does have good stats. So they're projecting that the sales are going to increase, which is great because again, we've had the lowest number of sales, not value, number of sales over this last couple of years. It looks like 2025 is going to end up being largely the same as 24. We had a tough spring, honestly, this year, for various reasons. But they're expecting them to go up 14%, which is nice. It's just going to get us more into an average number, but it's going to feel like a lot more because we've been kind of dealing with this. Prices are expected to raise 3 to 4%. That would be a normal year-over-year rate. Okay. Most year-over-year rates, I want to say it's going back longer than I've been alive, and I'm 52, but for decades, it's been 3 or 4% a year. So that will be just kind of getting back to, again, we're talking about the normal neutral market earlier. That's a nice neutral market. Rates trending towards 6, meaning they're basically going to stay where they've been the last few months. In theory, that's what they project is going to happen. If you are a buyer right now, and I'm telling you, if you are waiting for the rates to go down into the 5s, right now, you've got a lot more power. If you have a 6.2% mortgage and you're waiting, and I'd have to do the numbers because I'm not sure this is exactly right, but if you've got a 6.2% rate that you would get right now if you bought today, versus you're waiting for a 5.7, I don't even think they're going to get that low. But if they did, and that's what you're waiting on, but in the meantime, the prices are increasing 3 or 4%. Because everyone keeps waiting for this crash and it has not happened and it's not going to. And you know why? Because the inventory is still low. But if you're waiting for that and the price of the home continues to go up while you're waiting for this little bit of decrease in rate, you might as well do it right now before the price of the home goes up. And if the rate goes down, you're going to have more competition with other buyers. It's just, I know it's been kind of screaming it from the rooftops, but honestly, it's the truth. So, and mortgage applications right now are already up 31%, which means you already have a little more competition out there, buyers. It's probably going to only get a little bit worse if you think about it, if the rates do continue to hover in the low sixes and even into the high fives, we shall see. So anyway, the key takeaway is the desert market is stable, if not flat. But we are still, and so I'm going back to our desert cities here. We are still a very desirable market here with international interest. And so we're also kind of a suburb market, right? Because if you're somebody who lives in San Diego, Los Angeles, or Orange County, we're almost like a suburb because we are less costly here. Even with these numbers, we still cost less. And a lot of people can work from home, or maybe they only have to commute a couple days. So a lot of people are using it kind of suburb, and we're still in gorgeous part of Southern California, and we still have amazing weather, maybe except July and August, but it's not the end of the world. So that's pretty much it. That's our takeaway for November of 2025 and the third quarter of 2025. So if you have any wants or needs, if you just have some strategy you'd like to talk, if you're thinking about listing your home sometime into 2026, and especially if you're here, but even if you're other places, I have, again, a great network of agents I can refer you to. But if you are thinking about doing anything, buying or selling, let me know. I'd be more than happy to strategize with you and or find you an agent in the area that you're located. So I've got all of my information down. I also did a blog on this information. The blog is also being posted as well very shortly, and I'll have a link for that in the description also. So I hope you're having hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you're going into a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, all the things. And I can't wait to hear what you guys are doing and what you think. If you found this video helpful, I know you hear it all the time on YouTube, but I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and or just give me a like, because sometimes we feel like we're talking in the void here, like I'm here sitting here talking to my computer, and I don't know if people are getting a lot of value out of this or not, but the likes help me to know. They also help me to know what kind of content you're enjoying, and I can make more of that too. And that's it. So enjoy your holidays. Have a wonderful day.